Janice, are you able to check to see if,
Yeah, I have to go on the website to find the,
I know sometimes it
Maddie?
opens it for me automatically and then I end up having it going in the background, which is,
yeah, it will. It usually when you bring it up the first time, it will automatically start it, but I have to go on the website, like the Newtown website to get the link. So just give me 1 second.
So we
oh,
have,
Janice, are you able to check?
There you go.
It's going.
Yeah.
I think we're good. All right, so then I'll start recording as well. And then we'll get started. Okay. So we'll call to order the meeting of the Board of Education. This is a virtual meeting, December 15th, 2020. Welcome everyone. We have a large group here. So given that, let me tell you all that you are being recorded. This is a virtual meeting and it will be streaming on YouTube as well. We ask that all participants mute themselves to prevent any meeting interference, and that you can unmute using *6. I also ask that everyone wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking so that anybody listening on the phone is able to identify who is talking. This meeting is being held remotely with access by phone or streaming as indicated on the agenda. So having said all of that, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I will share. Oh, I'm seeing people are still joining the meeting here. And I'm going to share my screen so that we have the flag. And if you'll join me in saying the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Now, having done that, we'll follow that up with our statement of commitment to community. And I'll ask if Ms. Lideline could read our commitment.
As citizens of our community, we will conduct ourselves in accordance with Newtown's core character attributes as displayed in our character tree. We will be responsible for our actions and show respect for each other. We will interact peacefully, productively, and politely. We will be trustworthy and honest and show compassion toward others. Newtown's continued success is contingent upon our ability to persevere, to follow through with our commitments, and to stay focused on the greater good.
Great, thank you. And now we come to our item number 2 on the agenda, the celebration of excellence. And I'm so happy to welcome all of our guests for our celebration. And I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Rodriguez at this point.
Thank you, Dr. Koo. Well, we certainly have reason to celebrate our nurses this evening. This is truly a group who have worked tirelessly under these very extreme conditions, something never experienced at school in our lifetime. And much of this fell squarely on the shoulders of our nurses. And this included providing advice to parents, taking care of symptomatic students, helping out with our contact tracing and discussions with families, and not to mention offering comfort to the entire school community, including our own staff. I've worked with so many of these nurses, and I can tell you, just in talking with our staff throughout the district, they are true behind the scenes heroes. Ann Dalton, their supervisor, has also been instrumental in helping our health director, who's also on the call, Donna Colbert, with the contact tracing, which I have to tell you has gone extremely well this year, and they are the reason for that. I really need to point out that our nurses, who always have answers, and if they don't, they seek out those answers. It really does help keep us balanced. It helps us with good judgment, and it helps us make good decisions. And I want to thank you all for that. I also wanted to recognize, as I mentioned, Donna Colbert, I believe she's on the line, our health director, who has been throughout the voice of common reason in the midst of conflicting reports and data and messaging and so much more. But I'd like to take a moment to read all of the names. And if you can just wave if you're on, so that everyone knows who you are, of our entire nursing staff. We have Julianne Johnson from Holly, and Maddie Allen from, and Maddie Allen from Hedemeta, and Trish McDonald from Middlegate, and Maritza Borges from Sandy Hook, Deirdre Murphy, Reed, Jocelyn Tawi, also from Reed, Andrea Traeger, Middle School, Kim Carino, Middle School, Terry Mulsky, Middle School, Karen Powell, High School, Stephanie Daly, High School, Carissa Rotas, our floater nurse, Bonnie Nizbeski from St. Rose, and Christina Benoit from Fraser Woods. Again, really appreciate all that you've done this year, and thank you on behalf of the entire staff in Newtown Public Schools.
And on behalf of the board, thank you for all that you're doing in our schools, not only with the usual supports that we know you do every year, but also with these unprecedented health circumstances this year. We depend on you, and we're so thankful for all that you're doing in helping keep our schools healthy, and for the work that I know several of you worked on in getting our reentry plan set up at the beginning of the year. It has proven to be, I think, a successful plan, and I appreciate all that you're doing for our schools. We all appreciate all you're doing for our schools, so thank you. And now normally we would take a break and have some refreshments and wander around and socialize and say thank you in person. Unfortunately, we can't do that this evening because of the circumstances, but thank you all for coming to the meeting, and we very much appreciate all you're doing.
Thank you.
All right, so that brings us to our consent agenda, and I'll entertain a motion on that.
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of December 1, 2020 and December 8, 2020, and the correspondence report.
Second. Right. So Mr. D'Elia makes the motion and Ms. Harriman State seconds the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None, and no abstentions. So that passes unanimously. And that will bring us to our first public participation. So during the first public participation, the board welcomes commentary regarding any of the items on the agenda. To recognize it, please state your name and address for the record. We request that speakers be respectful and limit their comments to not more than 3 minutes. The Board of Education does not discuss personnel items or student matters in public. And then during the second public participation, The commentary may address the agenda or may introduce new issues for the board to consider in the future. We don't engage in dialogue during the participation, but if you would like more information, you're welcome to email the board. And is there anyone at this time who would like to address the board? If you could unmute yourself using *6 and let us know who you are. I see a lot of phone numbers on, and I'm not seeing anybody unmuting themselves. Is there anybody who would like to address the board?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, this is Stephanie Strover. I am a mother of 2 kids at Hedda Meadow, and I live on Possum Ridge Road. And I do have a statement. It's related to the COVID items. So I'll be quick. First, I'd like to say a great appreciation for all the teachers working in this difficult time, and a special shout out to Nurse Maddie at HOM for all of her amazing support of my kiddos. She's done a wonderful job. So I just want to heap on the congratulations and thanks to her there. I want to share with you this next statement, not out of arrogance, but of necessity, just to make sure that I'm really heard by the group. My expertise is in microbiology, infectious disease epidemiology, and public health. I come to the table with a PhD in public health, and I spent more than 10 years in the field of healthcare infection prevention before moving into my current position as a clinical investigator and faculty of research. So I've spent this year, as some of you may know, studying this disease and sifting through extensive research, which many of you have done as well, the CDC guidelines and the changes made along the way. I've been doing COVID research since it hit our doors, working with doctors and medical professionals and their recommendations based on their experience, not to mention my own knowledge and expertise base from my training. I do understand that there's been some staffing issues that are preventing our kiddos from being in school, though pleased that there was a happy update this morning. Thank you so much. Through research, data, guidelines, and science, I feel the issue seems to stem from over-quarantining of our staff and students who were exposed. I think this appears to have been a decision made through the lens of precaution, which I appreciate, but we did at the beginning of the year put many risk reduction strategies in place to prevent the transmission of the virus, some that work. We know they work, but our quarantine practices make me believe we're quarantined almost as though we didn't have any of these measures in place. So I'd like to propose on the heels of that Newtown schools create something of a scientific advisory council to include community professionals and other stakeholders. I'd be happy to stand it up myself, that can be transparent and really thoughtful, and that we can see that these conversations are happening, that speaks to the scientific nature of the virus, how it spreads, the actual virology behind it, and evaluate the method in which the CDC recommendations are actually implemented in our schools. I think that we need to be dynamic and use the evidence we have in our community to make good decisions. So I really urge you to pull together just a solid base of expertise, perhaps even outside of the current community that you have there, and operate in the context of our prevention measures. That's all I have to say. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you for taking the time to come and offer your suggestions. Take into consideration.
Michelle, we're having some issues with your microphone.
It never ends, huh? How about now?
At the moment, we can hear you.
All right, I'll lean back and not lean into my computer. That seems to be when it happens. Are there any other members of the public who would like to address the board at this time?
Hi, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Liza Llewellyn. I live at 10 Wills Road, Newtown, Connecticut. Previously, Liza Mecca. I want to just start off by thanking all of the teachers and staff that have been so instrumental in us even getting to where we are right now with our kids. I want to share with you some insight that, prior to today's email in regards to the reopening of schools, I went back and forth on how I wanted to present it, but, I think it's imperative that I continue with my original sentiment. So I'd like to start with a point of clarification that my words and plea do not stem from some overwhelmed parent looking for answers to childcare. I come to you with grave concern over the continued historical lack of transparency from this Board of Education. When I became a mother 10 years ago, I understood all the possibilities that came along with what has become my greatest source of pride and love. My concerns are directly tied to the state of decision-making as it relates to distance learning, hybrid learning, full remote, and the subsequent aching devastation of watching how it is affecting my children, one of whom you should all know very well, with how this district has failed him already so many times over. I'm part of a growing group of concerned parents that share in my disappointment, frustration, and concern, not because we can't find childcare, but instead because we are tortured with seeing the degradation of our children's emotional status, academic standing, and overall wellness your blanket decisions are making on them. From our vantage point, decisions you make without regard to even remotely trying to engage us as parents in a community. While I understand there was a reopening task force, I'm lost in how you determine who would be representative of the work they were doing. Any administrator with any sense of commitment to engaging their stakeholders would have taken a much bigger stand in making even a veiled attempt at free-flow dialogue with all parties. I can't help but feel reminiscent of the same sense of frustration and sadness I was plagued with just 2 years ago when I was fighting to get my son the appropriate services required for his disability. Unfortunately, special education doesn't affect the group at large, so the support I received was minimal in comparison to our current situation. I can't imagine the change and difference I could have made if I had a group topping over 200 families to reiterate my concerns, observations, and requests. I won't beat a dead horse, but you should know that the issues brought forth just 2 years ago remain an issue for many others that came after me. This Board of Education likes to tout a commitment to social emotional learning and often spews all the right words, engagement, community, and alike. However, this Board of Education lacks the wherewithal and know-how to put those words into action. While I understand these types of decisions come with a price, both figuratively and literally, I don't understand how a group of educated adults voted into positions we rely on to keep the best interests of our school system in place can be so flippant in response and responsibility. The repeated regurgitation of email responses from this board, each one a varied version of the previous one, are lame at best. The repeated tiptoeing around the issues at hand, hiding behind data and safety, is insulting. Let's just call it what it is and work collaboratively and creatively to fix it. You have a staffing issue, not a transmission issue. Where was the call to arms to the community, parents, and guardians? Where was the transparency in what you were really dealing with? Furthermore, where was your creativity and strategic planning for addressing the staffing issue? Our children need to be in school, all children, not just K through 6, come January 4th. You have failed my son so many times before, and because of those failures, he is even less equipped socially and emotionally to sustain this type of learning, isolation, and frustration. I implore you to take advantage of the myriad of parents and community members that are willing to do their part to make this work for the youth of our town, whether substitute teaching or volunteering.
Hello. So the alarm has gone off. Your 3 minutes are up. So if you could finish up, we'd appreciate it.
I have one more thing to say. I unfortunately remained quiet longer than I should have. And I think you guys should be scrambling to really assess the damage that your disregard and lack of communication has done not only to your reputation, but your future as a member.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to address the board at this time?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Jen Larkin. I live at 10 Marlin Road in Newtown. I first want to thank Dr. Rodriguez and the board for the encouraging news that we will be returning to school in January. This is positive news. And while I don't have children that are in grades 7 through 12, I pray these kids are also allowed the choice to be in school full-time soon. The idea that I might have to continue to work while facilitating another day, week, or even month of subpar education is almost too much to bear. We cannot keep doing this, is what I hear over and over again from my friends who are parents. Many of us are now riddled with anxiety, parents and children alike, as we wake up every single day. It seems our district has struggled with how to streamline the school day over the past few months. And while the teachers are doing undoubtedly their best, there is more downtime in the day than there is meaningful learning. Just today, while I was working, another parent sent me a video that I will admit was cute and funny of my daughter in her room, putting her chair with wheels on her bed and trying to sit in it in front of the entire class. These kids are not meant to spend what is supposed to be the best years of their lives isolated in their rooms, tied to a screen all day. Our lives, employment, and stability were equally shattered. We have struggled to find any semblance of a routine. We limp to the finish line each day, the entire house, including the kids, and we dread doing it again the next day. Face-to-face, in-person instruction provides the best development for the whole child, meeting their social, emotional, and intellectual development. Parents who are uneasy about their children returning, they can choose online learning. I am also extremely sympathetic to the teachers and the perceived risks. Sending my children to school in person, wearing masks, and following the well-established protocols that have proved successful are the safest options. The model we are currently in is not sustainable. I strongly encourage the town of Newtown to open our school buildings, give hundreds of families who want the choice of full-time, in-person learning that right. We have been patient throughout the hybrid and remote process. We cannot stand by quietly anymore. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you for taking the time to offer comment. Is there anybody else, member of the public, who would like to address the board at this time?
Hi, yes, my name is Jennifer Salinger. I live at 68 Marlin Road. I'd like to share a perspective as a healthcare provider who has been intimately involved in the caretaking of critically ill COVID patients. When little was known about the virus, healthcare providers rallied to navigate uncharted waters because this is what needed to happen. More than 15 members in the group of providers I oversee participated in daily direct care with the critically ill, and none of us got sick or tested positive. We quickly learned to trust that mitigation efforts and PPE work. I recently listened to a live public online forum involving the superintendent of Oxford, Dr. McKinnon, and the infectious disease and chief medical officer of Griffin Hospital, Dr. Brown. I found their transparency and discussion refreshing and informative, which has led me on the pursuit of organizing something similar for Newtown. During this brief update, Dr. Brown provided insights into why he believes kids should be back in school and why it is safe. Dr. McKinnon shared an honest perspective in recognizing similarities between the healthcare system and schools, while also recognizing there is a big difference in mindset. He acknowledged that educators and teachers focus on zero risk, and when there is risk, the mindset is to shut down. Furthermore, he acknowledged that zero risk mindset needs to change. The good news is that we have seen that data supporting the fact that kids are safest in in-person school. Out of the 471 quarantine school community members from known exposures, none of those have turned positive. Similarly, from December 3rd to 9th, the state reported 1,296 new COVID cases among K through 12 students, a 49% increase from the previous week. There were 289 cases reported among students attending in-person classes 5 days a week, a 16% increase from the week before. Cases among students attending a hybrid of online and in-person classes saw a 63% increase to 495 new cases, while online-only students saw a 59% increase to 502 cases. We can all see that data shows kids are safest in school. Mitigation strategies are working. Hybrid and remote learning models have higher numbers of transmission, which makes sense if you consider all of the variables. Higher transmission with hybrid and remote learning models will ultimately translate into higher community spread. The vaccine is coming, but this won't change the situation for the immediate future. We need to be dynamic and use data to support decisions, which is to get the kids back in school. Today's update from Dr. Rodrigue was encouraging, with the plan to return to school in person on January 4th. She had previously indicated there are staffing issues. This must be dealt with promptly if this is truly the issue in getting kids back to school. I think many of us want to know what the exact gap is with respect to numbers. There have been a number of people who have stepped up to offer themselves as substitutes. We need clarity if there is to be stop points with the plan to return to school on January 4th. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here to share your thoughts. Are there any other members of the public who would like to address the board?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Janet Kuzma, and I live at 12 The Boulevard. And I'm calling on behalf of my 4 children in the Newtown Public School System. First, I'd like to thank all of my children's teachers and principals for doing an amazing job this year with the task that has been handed to them. I truly appreciate all the hard work they're putting in to give our kids the best education they can from behind a screen. I would also like to thank Dr. Rodrigue for taking some time to meet with me and a few others this past Friday to discuss our concerns over staying in a remote model. We recently discovered many parents in our town had the same concerns as us, and our group quickly grew to over 200 members. On behalf of this group, we would like to thank you for doing the right thing and allowing us to have a choice to send our kids back to school in person in January. You may argue that our children are still getting an education, but I would point out the quality of remote education compared to in-person learning is vastly different for some, if not all, children. Like I mentioned earlier, I have 4 children, 5th grade, 4th grade, and 1st grade twins. They each have their own learning style, and while one of my children can manage to get through the day without stress and anxiety, the other 3 often end the day completely checked out, sad, and frustrated. My child with an IEP is struggling the most and continues to be anxious daily about remote learning. It's not just about academics. The mental toll this is taking on our children is beyond concerning. With 0 in-school transmissions, our schools have proven to be safe. The teachers and administration are clearly following safety protocols and keeping this virus from spreading within the schools. That said, it is imperative that we be given a choice to send our kids to school. These children are missing crucial interactions with not only their peers, but teachers as well. I strongly encourage you to not only send our kids back in January, but do whatever it takes to keep the schools open and allow us to have the choice of in-person learning. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us this evening. Is there any other member of the public who would like to address the board? I see nobody unmuted. You are also welcome to join us for the second participation if you're not able to unmute now. So to unmute, you use *6. Is there anybody who would like to address the board? All right. I will close out public participation, sensing no more comments from the public. And that'll bring us to our presentations on the agenda. So we have the counseling services and support. And Dr. Rodrigue, did you want to open this up for us?
Yes, so we have Dr. Longabuco, our high school principal, and Brett Nichols, our director of counseling, to talk about our counseling services K-12, and I think this is very timely. I know that Dr. Longabuco will talk about our Teen Talk Counselor. We talked about this program last year, if you recall, and the new Hope Squad, which is a suicide prevention program using peers, and I know that Deb Peterson also mentioned this a while ago. But we will start with Brett, who works closely with counselors across the district. And this has been really critical for our students, keeping them connected throughout this pandemic, no matter what mode of learning we're in. And I know they've all done an incredible job. Brett recently sent out, and I believe you did send that out, and it's posted, Brett, newsletter with a video from the counselors, which we just thought was fantastic. Again, our counselors, just like our nurses, are often, behind the scenes who meet with students and make a difference in all of our students' lives, no matter what is actually going on. So we'll start with Brett, and then we'll move to Dr. Longabuco. Brett?
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. Well, hello, everybody. It's so nice to see you all. So we understand as counselors here that it's been a challenging time for many students and families, and it's really stretched us as a counseling group to be creative in how we offer our programs and our services. But I'm truly proud of the work that the counselors have been doing throughout the district. They've all risen to the occasion, and we're adapting our curriculum to the lessons for each level, from the hybrid to the remote learning models. We've not stopped checking in with students and continuing our proactive connections. We are reaching out to the disengaged. There were many that were struggling prior to the new models, and there were some new ones as well that came up on our radar. But we're working with all of them. Dr. Rodriguez asked that I share our recent newsletter with you that we sent out to all the families in the district recently. So Dr. Longabuco, thank you so much. I don't know if you have it available, but if you could bring that up for everybody, that would be great.
Sure. Dr. Koo, can you give me access to share my screen? Thank you very much. Let's see. Is that working? Can you see that? Okay.
Yep,
go ahead, Brett.
Thank you again. So, while the newsletter speaks to some of the highlights, Dr. Longabuco, if you want to just scroll up and down there, I'll just highlight a few of the things that I'd like to point out. We just finished at the high school level our freshman and senior council workshops. We are now gearing up for the course request season, and we continue to make our connections with students a priority, especially during these challenging times. Each level has a few highlights. In the middle school, they have implemented their social emotional learning curriculum into the second step lessons. And the counselors at Reed continue to reach out to students one-on-one and small groups and through classroom lessons. They recently did the Reed Holiday Helpers program, which recently raised a lot of money to help families in need in our community. And I'm super proud of the minute meetings that are happening at the elementary level, where our school counselors are taking some time to meet with every student just to ensure that those connections are made from the very beginning. In addition, they're doing their whole body listening, their empathy and kindness lessons for those students, which I believe are making a difference. So, we continue to run our transition programs. Of course, this year we're modifying all of those programs in order to meet the needs of our current times. And I'll be meeting with our building level groups to continue our work with aligning our curriculum. The elementary and Reed school counselors and I are going to be meeting soon. And that will be our next meeting to, again, talk about some of the alignment. And Kim, if you wouldn't mind going back up to the top there, I know the video is there and we don't have to play the whole thing, but just to give everyone a glimpse, what I've done here is I've asked all the counselors in district to complete this sentence. I said, to be a school counselor here this year means, and we've put together this video, and I see that Janice Gabriel's on this call as well, and I wanted to thank her for putting this all together. And Janice, you've been so wonderful at taking all of my suggestions and changing it a million times. So thank you so much. But I've received a lot of good feedback from this, but this is just what we do. So Kim, I don't know if you have the ability to play that from here. And I'll just play a few snippets. Maybe we can just scroll to the end.
Sure, we'll give it a whirl.
Alrighty.
Hi, my name is Brett Nichols. I am the K through 12.
Yeah, you can definitely fast forward through this part.
It is such a privilege to work in such a great, wonderful community. I am so incredibly fortunate to work with so and who on a day.
It's not
This is
just
who
me.
we
Go
are.
ahead. You keep going.
This year,
It's buffering a little
and we
bit,
will
sorry.
continue to grow to best serve your needs. We are the Newtown School Council.
Being a counselor in 2020 means letting you know that I can help. So if you need anything, let me know, because I can help.
To be a school counselor intern at Hedda Meadow this year means making connections and relationships with each and every student in a new, flexible, and creative way.
It means working through challenges as a team and being there for our students, whether that's virtual or in person.
Hi. To be a school counselor here at Reed this year means helping students to make connections and feel like an important part of our Reed community, whether they're here at Reed or online.
Hey guys, Mrs. Mendez here.
We could probably fast forward.
In 2020.
Focusing on building
To the end.
with students
Just gives them an idea.
and other people in the building, whether they're an in-person learner or whether they're
want to help. So please reach out, whether it be in person, an email, or a phone call.
building their learning and having positive and impactful moments throughout our school days.
Hi guys. Little things. Having patience and having a good sense of humor.
Being a counselor here this year means being a consistent person that students can turn to in a year of uncertainty.
I'm Lisa Kilcourse, the school counselor at Hedda Meadow Elementary School. And being a school counselor here this year means connecting even more with each other and ourselves.
Kathy Oster, I feel very fortunate to be a school counselor at Newtown High School, where I strive to be a trusted and caring resource for Newtown High School students, their families, and their teachers.
You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me.
Thank you, Kim, for playing that, Dr. Longaluco.
Sure.
So that just gives you an idea of the video that we put together. Hopefully that made a difference. We just wanted to send out some messages of positivity and hope and resiliency. And hopefully the families and the students appreciated that. But anyways, School Counselor Appreciation Week, National School Counselor Appreciation Week is February 1st through the 5th. So if you have a counselor near you, if you want to go reach out and say thank you, I just want to have you have that date in mind. But thanks for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the counseling department. And if I will definitely send the video and newsletter to all the board members, so you can watch it in your own time, anytime you'd like. So thank you again, everybody. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. That's good to see, especially when we hear so much about, kids losing connections, and it's good to see that. I have a question for you, and that is, you mentioned following up with students that maybe we're losing contact with. Is that based on attendance, or is it something else that triggers that?
Well, it's a variety of reasons, and I think it's different at every level. It's challenging, as we all know, to learn remotely and to go back and forth with the different models, but we're doing what's best for the kids. I really truly believe that the people who are making these decisions have the best interest in the students in mind. Of course, their safety is foremost. But these students have a hard time, especially that we're seeing at the younger levels, where they may not have everyone at home to get them online and stay engaged. So we're finding at some of the older levels, students are missing classes a bit more than usual. And we just want them engaged, not only in their learning, but in their mental health. And that's why these programs that we offer through our department are so critical. The mental health is very important to keep them engaged for their social, for their academic and their personal needs. So we have to work hand in hand with the parents and the teachers to bring out the best in everybody.
Thank you. So are there any other board member questions? And I'm sorry if I can't. Mr. D'Elia?
Hi, I was just wondering what type of training or new, anything new that's helped you get ready to deal with what this new challenge, that the students are facing. I'm just wondering if you could speak to that for a second or two.
Of course, yes. So, in addition to the work that we do within our department and the professional conversations that we have, I'm also a member of 2 different DIRG groups where I work with other directors to learn about best practices and share professional learning with our department. And, CISCA, is a great group that offers professional development for counselors. Just the other day, they did a workshop in engaging the disengaged, for example. So I think things like this that counselors can attend district-wide will really give us all the learning and whatever is out there that we can apply to our district, the better. But I do feel like we are ahead in a lot of ways to other districts from what I hear in terms of our growth and development and providing what's best for kids.
Anyone else have a question? Yes, Mr. Delia, go ahead.
Is there anything this board can provide you that will help you better serve the children? Is there anything that you need that you might not have in the budget, or something that might be a little bit, you might say to yourself, this is not something that I planned on and it's an unanticipated expense. Is there anything that you need from this board to help support the children?
It's just so wonderful that you even asked that question. Thank you. I believe that we are doing the best we can. I think the more support that we can have, the better. But I believe we are very supported, at all the levels. I know that we are a bit understaffed, in my opinion, at the elementary level, because that's a concern that's come to my attention as there's one counselor there serving a very big population. But we are being creative again, with our support services, and we're, repositioning certain people in order to meet needs where they're the most high. So I think that we're doing the best we can, but I will definitely keep that question in mind because I do appreciate the offer, and whatever we can do to help kids is what's best.
May I follow up?
Yes.
Thank you. And I urge you to, if there's something that you need, please let us know, or let Dr. Rodrigue know, follow the channels, but feel free, please let us know if you need anything, okay? We want to support the children however we can, and I just think it's critical at this time. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Anyone else have a question? No. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Nichols, for sharing all the good work that your department is doing, and we look forward to seeing that link that it's on the high school website, but
it is.
You'll be sending us that anyways, just so it's easier for us to link to it. Yeah, okay.
You got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen again, and I will give you some updates on 2 programs that you've already heard about, but hopefully we can fill you in on where we have come since the last time we discussed these. Let me just switch here. Oops. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about Kids in Crisis, which is our Teen Talk counselor, and also Hope Squad, which is a new program that we are just starting at the high school. So as most of you know, Kids in Crisis is the agency and the organization, and Teen Talk is the actual high school-based counselor program that we're fortunate enough to have at Newtown High School. So we have a lovely counselor. Her name is Wendy Chum, and she provides individual sessions, group sessions, parent meetings, and really helps support us and has become a very useful member of our PPS staff. So we just wanted to give you a little update on how many students she's seen this year and what she's been doing. So throughout different models of instruction, she just started with us in September. And these stats go through, I think last Monday we asked for the actual report. So it's about 3 months worth of data. She currently has 28 students that she is seeing for individual counseling sessions. And some of the students' main needs are anxiety, crisis and safety assessment, suicidal ideation, and depression. And what you can quickly see on this slide is the number of students, which I mentioned, 28 students who are receiving individual counseling through Wendy. The number of sessions that she has held, which is pretty substantial, 62 sessions, considering that students are only in school. We'd scheduled 2 of those days based on their last names. She has had informal contacts, clinical collaborations, which is huge, connection and support to parents, crisis assessment, which is, I'll talk about a little later, but is kind of our in-house 211 that she's able to provide us, which is hugely helpful. And then, of course, school meetings that she has attended and helped out with, and referrals as well. So this is a lot that has happened just since her arrival in September, and we find it to be hugely successful and supportive. And here's a little breakdown of our students, first by gender and then by grade of who our Teen Talk counselor is currently servicing. So you can see a larger majority of female students, and then slightly heavier in 9th, 10th, and 11th, and not as many 12th graders. And we partially established that to the fact that potentially they already have a relationship with a PPS staff member from our building. And you know, Wendy is intervening typically at their recommendation. You can also see the breakdown. She charted the breakdown of concerns or problems that students were able to come to her with, leading from the most being anxiety, all the way down to our SOS lessons, which many of you know about, and the follow-up conversations that come from the way students reply to that lesson, with a variety of things in between. One important one to note being the crisis safety assessment and suicidal ideation. We're going to connect that to our Hope Squad program, but also to the fact that the Kids in Crisis Agency and the Teen Talk counselor provide in-house 211 support. And so because they're in the building, we have access to that instantly, and we can get Wendy immediately when a situation does arise. We're able to have that support versus having to call 211 and potentially wait for that duration. So it saves us a little bit of time in those situations. So we spoke a little bit about the in-house support. The Kids in Crisis Agency also comes along with a 24/7 care line, which is a number that we encourage our students and our families to use and remind them of regularly. It is 24/7 vacations, weekends, summertime. It's an instant contact, and there is a care worker on the other end of that line all the time. And so the fact that we can have the Teen Talk counselor in the building and they know that there is this hotline that they can have access to at all times is hugely supportive. Kids in Crisis also has a residential facility should someone need it in Greenwich, and they provide transportation to and from for the duration of time so that the student can still come to school. And again, that's organized directly through the Teen Talk counselor. Teen Talk counselors also have the ability to visit homes and meet parents for coffee at Starbucks or off school grounds, or at strange hours where our staff typically are not working. If a parent can only meet at 6 or 7 p.m., working for Kids in Crisis in the agency gives them the flexibility to kind of juggle their hours. And we feel very fortunate with Wendy that she's very flexible with us to make sure that we're best servicing our students during the school day, but also in times where they are not necessarily connected to us. As I mentioned before, Wendy has also been a great connection to our PPS department, to our school counselors, our school psychologists, and our social workers. She has morphed right into our group, and really we're finding great value in just the short bit of time this year in both Wendy, the Teen Talk position, and Kids in Crisis in general. So I'll briefly tell you about Hope Squad. If you remember, Deb Peterson, Dr. Grayson, Stacy Miles, and myself went to Utah last year in October to visit actually the founders of Hope Squad and several of the schools that have programs that are hugely flourishing and up and running. And the kind of background is there was a major suicide issue in teenagers, middle schooler and high schoolers in the state of Utah. And so this man took it at kind of his mission to figure out a peer-to-peer program, because kids talk to kids, to try to stop this and get the information to the adults that can help take care of these issues. And so he created Hope Squad, and we went out there for 4 days and we were trained. And we went through a variety of programs with their people. We also got to visit a whole bunch of schools and see some really awesome kids really taking this role very seriously and the powerful work that it's been doing. And, you know, we kind of unanimously decided that this is something that we can make happen and that we can use, and that can really kind of focus on the mental health, wellness, and kind of breaking down that stigma that it's okay to not be okay and tell somebody about it. And so we brought this back, and it's been kind of a long year through a little crazy path, but we have gotten to the place where we're further down our process now, and I'll update you on that. So as I mentioned, this is a peer-to-peer suicide prevention program with the intention to reduce youth suicide through education, training, and peer intervention. So just, you know, a little bit of what I told you about Utah. This is just a statistic that backs up that teen suicides were up more than 25%, which is part of the reason why the program started, and how it really pinpoints the issue that they're looking at here. So it's Dr. Grayson and Stacy Miles, one of our school psychologists, are our advisors at the high school, with Deb Peterson and I kind of backing it up from the administrative side. And so we started the process last year, actually, probably about halfway through the original quarantine period. And we started a peer nomination, because that is how the process starts. And so we sent a survey to all of our students asking each of them to list 3 peers that they would feel comfortable talking to if they were struggling. And so we got a whole host of names from last year's 9th, 10th, and 11th graders, so our current 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, and we pared down that list. And we got ourselves to a list of just between 16 and 18. We then took that list, sent it to the school counselors for their review of the students. And then we invited those students to join us in an individual interview session, both with the student and their parent, because we understand that this is a topic that parents need to be involved in, and they need to fully understand the program and what would be required of their student should they choose to participate. So we ended up with 14 wonderful students and parents who are very excited about this starting and to get going. And so we, Paula and Stacy held individual interview sessions. And then there was a large group parent meeting last week where we reviewed the parent manual and just some information about the program. And then tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., which the students decided, not us, they chose 7 a.m., is their first Hope Squad official meeting as a group of 14. So we're excited for that tomorrow, and we're excited to bring them back to you once we get them up and running so that they can truthfully give you a report, because the premise of this program is peer-to-peer connection, and they're really going to be the ones on the ground that kind of help us as the eyes and ears. And I think, you know, the most powerful thing I got from our trip to Utah, a lovely 9th grade boy turned to me and said, "Adults are scary and kids tell kids things." And that's the most powerful thing you can probably imagine. And if a kid telling another kid something as small can save their life, then it's hugely impactful and worth every minute of our time and energy. So the premise of training our students, the objectives are to train them to recognize suicide warning signs and then be able to act and get to the appropriate trusted adults. Our PPS staff has done an amazing job making sure students know who the adults are, but sometimes that connection is lost from a student to an adult. And so this is an added link and another layer of cushion in that process. To build positive relationships among peers to facilitate acceptance for seeking help. It is okay to get help, and you won't be judged for doing so. And then finally, to change the school culture regarding suicide by reducing stigmas about mental health. Last year, we ran in conjunction with the Jordan Porco Foundation, we ran our 1-day fresh check, and it was very well received. Many of you remember hearing Millen speak about it last year, and then he was actually the keynote speaker at their gala, because we were one of the first high schools to run that program. And this is a continuation of that. And one of the things that Hope Squad runs is a program called Hope Week, where they do all kinds of positive messages and activities for the duration of a week for our high school students. And finally, some of the things that Hope Squad promotes is partnership with local mental health agencies, connectedness, anti-bullying, school safety, reducing stigmas of mental illness, and increasing help-seeking behavior. And at the end of the day, we think all of those are so important, and we value all of those. And we're really excited to have our students on the ground involved in this. And we will be bringing them back to you with an update, and they can share with you firsthand their information. So thank you for taking the time to listen, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Let's see, is there anybody who has questions? Ms. Zukowski? Yep. Did you have a question, Ms. Zukowski? Oh, we can't hear you. I know it says you're not muted, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll get closer to the Kids in Crisis program seems like a 365-day, 24/7 program. And it seems like a very heavy duty type of program with a lot of services for the high school demographic. Have you talked with the Newtown Social Services Department and the Newtown Youth and Family Services to find out whether or not they might want to leverage that type of program too?
I cannot tell you if they're interested in leveraging that type of program, but I can tell you we work very closely with both of those as far as connectedness and referrals between all of our PPS staff and Newtown Youth and Family and Social Services. So I don't know that they would necessarily use the Kids in Crisis program as it's meant as a school-based program, but I can tell you that Wendy has done an excellent job making sure she is connected to all of our local resources.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have questions? No comments? No, I sense none. That's great to hear about. Thank you for sharing. I remember hearing about the trip, but now it's good to hear about how that's come to fruition and what's happening as a result. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Sure.
All right. That will bring us to our reports, and starting with the chair report. I think I told everybody that you can't hear me.
It's better now. It was.
Okay. Legislative Council meeting dates for the CIP are January 6th and January 20th. And this is our last meeting of the year. And I just wanted to thank the board, the superintendent, and all of our staff. This has just been an incredibly challenging year for everybody. And I want to thank all of the Newtown staff who've contributed to the district's ability to pivot to an entirely new learning environment. I want to thank the board for all of the hard work that everybody does year-round: policy, curriculum and instruction, our finances, our communications. All of the work that gets done is just not possible without everyone's effort on the board, because we're only 7 of us and it's a lot of work. And I really want to thank Lori for taking on the weight of running a district during a pandemic. I'm sure this is not anything you ever would have planned as part of your career. And I want to thank you so much for helping negotiate through this entire year. It's truly a Herculean effort on everyone's part, but you've been leading us through all of this. So thank you. So I wish everyone a happy holiday, a happy new year, and a bit of a break over the next couple of weeks. And that's it for the chair report. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but I'll leave it there. Okay, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Rodrigue, then.
Thank you, Dr. Koo. As you know, yesterday was the anniversary of 1214, and I want to thank the Interfaith Council for putting together a virtual pre-recorded service for our staff. Typically, we've gone in person, and I just know that this was truly appreciated. And I know there were other virtual services in town offered by St. Rose, but I wanted to just take a moment and thank Matt Krebins and the Interfaith Council for opening that up to our staff. I always start my day at Sandy Hook Elementary to check in on staff, and even 8 years later, this is always tremendously difficult for the entire district and the community. And again, we took the time to remember and reflect and to send our thoughts and prayers to the victims' families and their ongoing healing. Moving on, I wanted to just mention our peak subgroup partnerships who are putting together a wonderful model using our paraprofessionals to work with students in K-6 in fun ways to engage them so they can make connections with their peers virtually after hours through games and mindfulness activities and other social emotional learning opportunities. Again, we are paying attention to students' attitudes and their mindset right now and what they might need. And we are really excited about this program. I want to thank Debbie Pond and others on that peak subgroup and all of our paras who are volunteering their time to do that and work with students. As you know, we have snow and lots predicted to come our way this week. And as you know, our plan is to call for a snow day, our first two, no matter what mode of learning we're in. So this is looking to be quite heavy in terms of amounts, and this may actually be called in advance as we get closer and if the prediction sticks. But I did want to remind everyone of the snow plan. It was also put in my communication to parents and staff as a reminder. If I do call the snow day, then there will be no remote learning. It will be a true snow day. And finally, we are just a week away from the holidays and our winter break. And I really do hope everyone, staff, students, parents, and all members of the board find some time to pause and take a breath and just truly enjoy their families, and wishing you all in advance a peaceful and enjoyable holiday. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. Do we have any questions? Follow-up? All right. Sensing none, we'll move on to committee reports. I know we've had a couple meetings since our last meeting. Does anybody want to volunteer to go first? Shall I call on policy, Ms. Herman-Stites?
Sure. I know we discussed this with our meeting with Nick Caruso from CABE, so I really don't have too much of an update, just that we'll be having the second read on policies that we discussed last meeting. We had some further discussion at our policy meeting, and we're continuing to look at the personnel policies. One in particular, the policy on evaluation of coaches, will be coming to you sooner. We did some heavy edits on that policy, and we're really proud of that work.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Voro or Mr. D'Elia, and then I'll go to Mr. Voros after Mr. D'Elia.
CIP committee met. I'll be brief. The Board of Finance expanded the Hawley project over 3 years. We talked about the CIP. When Tanya presents her financial report, when I make that motion, I'll speak to everything that's financial related before Tanya speaks. So other than that, everything's really financial related. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Voros. I'm looking for your phone number in here somewhere. Did we lose him? I think we might have lost him. I'll just, for curriculum and instruction, we met and discussed or had a presentation on I hear Mr. Voros. Do you want to pick it up from here, Mr. Voros? We met.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'd be happy to. We met, and the the principals of the Newtown Middle School presented the beginnings of their schedule change that's very comprehensive. So we will be meeting again on the 22nd of December to do part 2, which will be the sped portion of the changes that will occur at the middle school. You all received extensive notes, and if you would indulge us until the 5th of January, when we will give you before then, a synopsis of the complete change that's going to hopefully occur at the middle school next year. So at this point, that's all I'm going to say, and we will make sure that you completely understand the ramifications here before we all vote on this, because it has very slight budget implications. In any case, I'm finished with my report, and thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on any of these 3 reports that our committees are giving? And are there any liaison activities or any committees I've missed? All right, Ms. Zukowski.
The communication committee met also, and we're hoping to get the next newsletter to the board the second weekend, the second meeting in January. It's going to be focusing on technology, in particular, the value of that technology brings to the classroom, as well as some of the nuts and bolts.
Very good, thank you. All right, so that'll bring us to our student representative report. Do we have a report from our student reps? Fantastic.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Rodriguez. I'd like to start off by talking a little bit about how the school day is going. So for a lot of students, sitting in front of the computer screen can be tiring, and teachers are pretty aware of this. And so what some of my teachers have been doing is giving us small stretching or walking breaks where we can take some time away from the screen, which is really nice. As Jillian spoke about last meeting, the 1-hour lunch break is extremely helpful. And it gives students a really nice break from the screen so they can enjoy their lunches. On to clubs. Clubs are going very well. Any meetings are held virtually. National Honor Society has been active in getting their events planned. A couple of fun events have taken place, among others. Another of the events, which is kind of fun, recently took place at Maplewood Senior Living Community, where some members went Christmas caroling. Exciting news is coming for a lot of seniors this week. A lot of students who applied early decision and early action will be hearing back from colleges. We're all looking forward to hopefully positive news. That is all for my report. Thank you.
I will continue. So, good evening, members of the Board of Ed and Dr. Rodriguez, Superintendent Dr. Rodriguez. So I wanted to focus my report this week on specifically electives and arts programs going on in school, because I know that learning is very different for them, whether it's choir, band, painting, cooking, they can't just sit in front of the screen like the traditional math or English classes. So I tried to reach out to as many people as I knew or found out that were involved to get different responses from everyone. So to start off, the choir and jazz band both started having virtual practices every week. So by that, they actually sign on, they sing, they bring their instruments so they can see their fellow band members with the trumpets and whatnot going. And I think some common difficulties between the two were just that it takes a little longer now to learn the music since it's a lot more independent. And big problem with the choir was that it's hard to speak on top of each other and to get your voices in sync. On Google Meet, everything cuts out and lags, and we can't talk at the same time as another student in class. So I would imagine that is a very strong difficulty for the choir. But on a more positive note, I heard that they were all tasked with recording one song and the choir teacher is working really hard to edit all of their voices together to make a recording to send out to all of the kids and family or whoever would like to listen to it that pieces together all of their voices, which I think is really cool. It's kind of like what all the programs are doing on TV, where like you log on and watch the videos of the people from their home singing. So I think that's like a really cool idea, and I can't wait to hopefully see what they made. As for electives, I talked to someone in ceramics, baking and pastry, culinary, and painting. And I think ceramics and painting were kind of along the same lines as when we first went into the distance learning. All distance learning, they had a specific day to go pick up materials from school, so that for the next couple of weeks they've just been at home working on their projects. So if you were in ceramics, you would have picked up your clay, and then you sign on to class. Your teacher tells you what project you're working on for the day, and you use your clay to make it. And I think that the hope is that they will be able to like put them in the kiln at the end of the semester, so they can still see their final project. But ceramics projects and painting projects take a long time to do anyway. So as long as they had their materials, they were all set. For baking and pastry and culinary, the beginning electives were they all signed a form in the beginning, right when we went to all distance, that saying that it wouldn't be a problem for them to cook at home or use their kitchens without adult supervision, I guess. So each week the beginning classes get one recipe, and they get to like record themselves or send in their final product to their teacher, and they get to see what everyone else made and pictures of everyone else's final meal, which is very cool. And then the higher levels of culinary, for some of like the older, like the seniors, people in my grade who have been doing it for like all 4 years now or 3 years, they cook almost every day. So I talked to someone, and he said that they're still getting in lots of practice, and he's not at all like feeling like, I mean, they are missing out a little bit on working with other people in their class, but he thinks he's still getting just as many cooking meal opportunities as he would if we were in school. I talked to a senior in the NHS drama program at school, and I'm sure many of you have heard that they are streaming a one night only live event this Saturday at 7 p.m. It's called A Wonderful Life, a live radio play. So they're trying something new. And so I talked with one of the seniors that's extremely involved to get more of a look at what they did, because I knew they started like filming this weekend. So she said they spent 14 to 15 hours on Zoom from Friday through Sunday this weekend. They were sent their scripts just on Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday they filmed it all on the Zoom. So when it was like your turn, you would sign on to the Zoom. She said you would run through the lines once, and then the next time they would film it and record it. And now that all of the lines have been pieced together, now that all of the lines have been filmed, Miss Gabriel and some of the prior graduates are working to edit it all together so that this Saturday, parents and anyone who bought tickets can watch the radio play. And it wasn't much a concern. It's supposed to be like a listening radio play, so it wasn't much a concern of how it all looked, but it's mostly how it sounds and how the acting is. And I think it's really exciting and something new that we'll see how it all plays out. And she also said that as of Sunday night, they already had sold 100 tickets. So I think clearly people are very interested and are still want to know what's going on. And I think I think just because we're trying something new, it also attracts more people. So I'm very interested to see what that's like this Saturday. Then the last thing I just wanted to mention was that it seems the safest way for high schoolers to get involved with the community with volunteering and contributing this holiday season is with drives and like drop off events. So we have a couple of like canned food drives and holiday card drives going on right now. So the Tools for Living class is running a holiday card drive. The athletic department has a gift card drive going on right now. And then the UNICEF Club has a food drive on this Thursday, for all donations going to the Faith Food Pantry. Sorry about that. And yes, I think that is all, but I think it's great that we are still able to do these things with the pandemic still going on, but that we are still participating in the holiday season of the joy of giving back to the community in as many ways as we can. And that concludes my report for this week.
Thank you. I'm giving a thumbs up. Are there any questions from board members? I don't see any. Thank you for following up on the board members last time. That's great to have you here to help us understand. I'm trying to, can you hear me?
Mind if I wrap this up for you?
Sure, please. Yes, do it.
Lucille and Jillian, thank you for a wonderful presentation of what's happening in our schools. The board really appreciates everything that you do, and your reports are eloquent, well thought out, and cover the gamut as far as what's happening within the schools. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it working yet? All right. Okay, so on to the financial report, and I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the Board of Education approve the financial report and transfers for the month ending November 30, 2020.
All right, Mr. D'Elia makes the motion, and Ms. Herman Stites seconds the motion. And Mr. D'Elia, were you going to speak to this?
Very briefly, because Ms. Vadas is going to take the reins on this, but I just want to point out a few things that we discussed in the CIP committee about the financial report. One thing really important for us to realize is that the COVID expenses are significant, well over $1.5 million at the CIP meeting, and I think it's changed since then. And yet our budget does not show a deficit of $1.5 million. And it's important for board members and community members to understand that money that's been budgeted for has not yet been spent. So while it might not show the strain on the budget, the strain is there, and it's significant. One thing that I really want to point out is we have spent, we are in the red for technology, and I'm sure Ms. Vadas will speak to this. For technology, I think it's around $700,000. And that's one thing that I just wanted to point out, that there are some significant expenses related to COVID. And while we look at the overall budget, it may not show a $2 million deficit. It's because the money just hasn't been spent yet. As far as budgeted money has not yet been spent. Okay, Ms. Vadas, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Okay, hi, good evening, everybody. Would you prefer to start with the COVID expenses, or should I just jump right into the financial report?
I think maybe an explanation, now that Dan has, or Mr. D'Elia has piqued our interest, maybe addressing the COVID expenses would be good.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Can I share my screen?
You should be able to. If you can't, let me know. And
I'm looking for it. Just give me 1 second.
Is it something I have?
Oh, no, I have it. I just have to find it. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, great. You can see the financial report for the COVID expenses? Perfect. Okay. So yes, as Mr. D'Elia explained, we did discuss this report at the subcommittee meeting. And this report is set up to show all of our expenses along with our anticipated expenses or things that are encumbered and our total expense. Over here on the right, you have the Corona Relief Grant that did offset all of the expenses by $380,000. So right now, currently, we have a net of 1.8 that's included in our budget. And like Mr. Dealey was saying, there are areas in our budget that our budget is basically carrying all of these expenses right now. And there are areas that we have not fully expended, and there will also be some areas of savings. And the savings are due primarily to COVID-related reasons, as are the expenses. So let's just walk through this report. On the top here, you see all the personnel expenses that we've incurred. We have a total of $475,000, of which $238,000 was offset by the Corona Relief Grant. And these expenses include things as the additional nurse hours, the increase in para hours, custodial overtime for the continued cleaning, the deep cleaning that we're doing. This is an anticipated amount of $65,000, which could fluctuate depending on our model of learning. We also have some special education outside student services. The bus monitors that we had at the beginning of the year were $73,000, and some committee work. Below that, you see the facilities expenses. And now this is all of our PPE, the furniture and fixtures, any storage units that we had, some additional signage, and the disinfectant. Again, we have $53,000 encumbered with a total expense of $520,000. Our Corona Relief Grant offset only $89,000 of that portion. In technology, as Mr. Delia was stating, we have spent over $1 million, but I just want to point out, this number will be adjusted in the upcoming months as we're going through all of our inventory right now. Some of these devices were actually intended for our original budget. So you'll see this number shift over the next month or so, but we have spent over $1 million in devices. We've also spent miscellaneous equipment, includes things as cameras, microphones, some software. We also had to increase our bandwidth. That's an ongoing cost throughout the year. So you can see our subtotal in technology is $1.1 million. Again, that number will fluctuate a bit in our next report. And we're also returning some of these devices as they were being tested and not needed at this time. Other purchases include the lunch program when we were subsidizing for the high school to receive the free the lunches at no charge. We had some legal fees that we incurred. And at the school level, we've been purchasing a variety of items such as bins or totes, baggies, things to put, recess items, things like that. And that's totaled $44,000. So our total cost for the COVID-related items are $2.2 million with an offset of $380,000, which was the Corona Relief Grant, which leaves us at a net of 1.873. Down below here, you have our original draft of savings, our estimated savings, and you can see we're very close to that number. These savings, I do feel, are valid. I believe they will carry us through the end of the year, but also included like that, what I stated earlier, I believe we will have some additional savings, and that could be in the area of professional development, transportation. I also see a possibility in our energy accounts as we have some virtual net metering that's going online and has produced a healthy balance in there, and possibly a few other accounts. So before I go any further, do we have any questions about this report?
I can't see.
But you can put a top.
Is there anybody? There's a board member who wants to ask questions. Just ask, because I can't see who's on or not.
Michelle?
Mr. Voros?
Yes, I have, Tanya, I can't see the screen because I'm just by phone, but the professional development account, how much money is in it that is allegedly going to be saved?
Well, Mr. Morris, on my report, I'm suggesting $35,000. I believe that's a valid amount at this time. And just, you know, we have to remember that we're only in the 5th month of the year.
Yeah.
And there's so many unknowns at this point. I feel that will increase, you know, maybe another $20,000-$30,000, but we have to wait and see. Unfortunately, it's kind of a wait and see scenario.
You mean the savings part of it will increase?
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So, I'm not quite sure that Ann Uberti will be excited about that, but we can talk about it because that professional development money should be spent, and there's many areas where it could be spent. I don't know how to get everyone together or whatever, but I'm sure it will be spent. So I'd like to think that it's not going to be savings because there are many areas of professional development that are needed, no question about it. But that's something we can discuss with Mrs. Uberti. Okay, thank you, Tanya. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I also should have pointed out that that's also inclusive of some staff training dollars. So that's why I do estimate a savings. It's both the professional development and the staff training. And because of our current situation, we haven't had much time or, you know, the ability to use those dollars for the staff training. So it's not just professional development. That's what I'm trying to say.
Dr. Koo?
Yep, Dr. Rodriguez.
So Tanya, I can't see the top of the screen, but did this also include the savings from the paraprofessionals we didn't hire or some staffing?
No.
Okay, so I just want to point out that there are other pieces of the other elements of the budget where we will see savings that can offset, obviously. The other thing I want to point out, when you look at the draft savings at the bottom and you look at the 1.8 71986, that if you think about it, that's very, very close. And actually, Tanya and I were talking about how close we came to my submitting 1.5 to the state at that time. And I know that it was Ron earlier and Tanya later, we went through this and combed through the expenses anticipated and otherwise, and knew that there would be some savings either way. And as Tanya suggested, the technology isn't completely accurate yet. We've got to really look at what was a piece of that may lead to some savings there. But I will say it's pretty accurate. And I believe at one of the Board of Finance meetings, I did say we're at 1.5. That's what we were asked at that time. But technology could make that go up, if you recall my saying that. So we're pretty right on from that amount that we submitted to the state of Connecticut. And am I correct, Tanya, that the 400,000 that the town, that is not in here as well, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify those points. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's amazing that we're almost right on that 1.5 million, and that was estimated before the end of the year. So.
All right, so I'm trying to figure out this. What we really need to do is move on. I've allowed this to sort of drift off of the motion of approving the financial report. So maybe if there are no more questions on the COVID expenses. And so just to be clear, these are appearing in the financial report. They're just in different object codes and they're dispersed throughout.
That's correct, Dr. Koo. And, I have them all identified, but to point them out in the financial report, it's very difficult because they're commingled amongst 900 plus accounts.
Okay.
So, but we can look at that on the financial report, and there are some areas that are noticeable.
Okay, so if there are no more questions on COVID expenses, maybe we can move on to the financial.
I'd like to, let's see, are you seeing me right now?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm about to present the 5th report of the 2021 school year. And this report continues to provide year-to-date expenditures, active encumbrances, and anticipated obligations. A majority of the account balances are estimated as full budget spend and captured in the anticipated obligation column. The account analysis will continue as we will be meeting with individual departments in the upcoming months and adjusting the anticipated obligation column to more accurately reflect the needs of our district. This report also includes transfer recommendations to adjust salary accounts resulting from teacher program reassignments, as well as shifts in non-certified salary accounts. So with that being said, I'd like to pull up the financial report. Are you seeing me? I'm sorry, I'm kind of.
We see you, but not the report.
Okay, let's see. How about that? Can you see the report or me?
No, we still see you.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, just bear with me one more second.
There we go.
You see, okay, do we have it up now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so this report shows our new balance. You can see that our year-end projection has changed from $13,000 to a negative $399,303. The major drivers associated with this change can be found in our contracted services and the recalculation of our excess cost grant, which came in lower than we originally budgeted by approximately $300,000. And as we discussed before about the $400,000 from the town's capital non-reoccurring, I feel at this point it's necessary to transfer $400,000 from the Board of Ed expenses over to the town's capital non-reoccurring account. I'd like to highlight a few sub-accounts so we can see what's going on. So as we talked about before in our para balance, para educators, we still see a very large balance there of $266,000. Over the last month, we did have the addition of 10 new hires, but that still leaves about 10 to 12 open positions. Now this number here, we have not forecasted, but we will in the upcoming months. So this number will change as we look to include paras that will hopefully be coming on board sometime in January or February. The custodial balance, we see quite a large balance there, and that's primarily due to the summer student work that didn't happen in July and August. And we also had some turnover in that area. And we're also experiencing some large balances in the career job and salaries, special education services right over here. And this is primarily due to elimination and a repurposing of a position in our career center, along with some tuition offset. You can see that right here, it's $82,000. Also, the reallocation of their excess cost grant provided an additional $12,000 to the special education service salaries. One thing I think is important to note is we still see a very large deficit in our teaching and specialist salaries, as we're still finding it difficult to capture that budgeted turnover number of $624,000. And I feel it's plausible at this time to suggest that we will not satisfy that budget number. Most of our turnover occurs at the beginning of the year, and this is going to be an area of concern, and we need to evaluate that at budget time for next year. So moving on to employee benefits. Over the prior month, there wasn't really much of a change in the benefits. We're still experiencing a deficit in our unemployment costs, but we do continue to work with our HR department, and we're still identifying and making sure that the claims are valid, and we dispute claims when they come in and they are necessary. Professional services. This is what the account we were talking about just a moment ago. This also includes staff training. So there wasn't much of a change in this balance over the prior month. The balance change was $14,000 overall. But again, this account will be closely monitored as we speak to department heads. We will be sending out some department financials, so we will be able to better capture those figures throughout the district. In purchase property services, excuse me, we did see a small change over the prior month. We see a balance of about $39,000. And I think at this point, it's still too early to estimate any kind of a savings in that area, but there is a possibility of a small balance in our contracted services and repairs. But again, we just have to wait until we have more information in the upcoming months. So moving on to other purchase services. And here in contracted services, we see a large deficit, and this is primarily caused by the lunch program. I would just like to switch tabs for a moment. I put together a little display to better show you what's going on in lunch program. Can you see that? Different screen? Okay, great. So I just want to explain what's been happening. This display shows you the K-8 lunch program and then the high school, because they were on two different, not budget lines, but they're two different accounts. So in 2019, you can see the total revenue for the K through 8 was $94,000. We had a total operating expense of $83,000 and operating other expenses for $15,000. You can see a loss in the K through 8 of $3,500, which was very minimal. The high school, on the other hand, had a total revenue of $72,000. Gross product cost was $57,000 with an additional operating cost of $4,000. And it provided a profit of $11,000, covering the loss of the K through 8. Oops. And here we see, oh boy, did that go away?
Yep.
Oh. Okay, won't touch it. Here we see 2020, completely different picture. Our K-8, you can see our total revenue has dropped by 57%. Again, we have our operating and gross product costs, which are fixed costs we cannot get away from. And you see the loss of the K through 8 of $35,000. This was for November of this current year. The high school, which is now in the National School Lunch Program, has provided a little bit of a reimbursement sales. You can see it was $12,000. In the past, we did not, but that was also included in the financial report as an expense. Again, we have our gross product cost, our payroll and operating expenses as fixed, and the gross loss of the high school was $4,200, which was actually pretty low in comparison to October. So overall, the lunch program in November had a total loss of $39,000. So you can see clearly that it's our revenue. And I mean, this is happening for basically two reasons: decreased population and the lack of participation. So any questions about that display before I move on?
Yeah, Ms. Bettis, so we're being reimbursed at the high school now because we did opt, I don't know how to phrase it correctly, but opted back into the federal program. Is that right?
Yeah, Yes, that's correct, because it's now back on the national lunch program. Before it was not. And the high school, because of the a la carte sales and different products that they could, have for the students, they had a large revenue stream, $72,000 just in November last year. And now the high school would always carry all of the schools and offset any losses that happen at the K through 8. But being on, with the National Lunch Program, we do have our offset with the federal reimbursement. If we didn't have that right now, we would be subsidizing, as we did in September and October for the high school, meals at no charge.
So over the 9-10 months of the school year, this is just 1 month. And the previous 2 months to November were actually more of a loss than November was. Is that right?
October was a loss of about net $90,000, and that is included in the year-to-date expenses.
Yeah.
October was heavy because the high school was not on the program.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, all right, I'll take the screen off. Let's go back to the financials. So going forward, we did estimate a full year forecast of 363, and that is based on the year to date. November is included. For December, we're estimating a loss of approximately $15,000, and then going forward, we based it on a hybrid model, such as November, depending on the days and the breaks. So, if everything stays the same, we could experience a little bit more, a little bit less than 360, but that's what we're estimating right now. In transportation services, we do have a pretty good balance in there right now of $292,000. That's primarily made up of a few items that you already know about. One is the out-of-district credit from carryover from last year, $37,000 for the 2 less days in this year's contract. We also had a savings in the summer program. We just didn't transport as many students, so we had a savings of $40,000. And being remote in December, our transportation provider has given us a 5% discount while we're not running. So we have that included. And then we also had some students that combined runs and are out of district, which I have to say that could change at any time. So this is why I don't include some of these items in the COVID offset, if you will, because they are somewhat variable still at this time. And we see $100,000 currently in tuition out of district. And again, this could change if 1 or 2 students happen to get outplaced. The number could change. In our supply account, there wasn't much of a change over the prior month. It did go down by $14,000. And that was primarily in the plant supplies, which again is, at this point, it's still some COVID expenses, but we're now starting to purchase some of the expenses that were some of the budgeted items. And I believe at this point, we probably have enough supply, disinfectant and hand washing solution, things like that, to carry us through the year. So this balance is pretty much offset here by, you can see our electricity. The virtual net metering is up and running, and we have a pretty good handle on the high school. So we were forecasting a $200,000 balance in this area. We also have 5 other schools that came online, which right now they're coming in all over the place. So as soon as we get a better estimate on those accounts, you'll see that number included in here as well. We have some small savings in fuel. Of course, that number is going up a little bit as we're not running the buses right now. And then in technology, we still see a large deficit of $692,000. This number really didn't change over the prior month. And as I stated before, I believe that at this point we have all the devices that we need. You will see the shift from the COVID document coming over to this document because some of those devices were purchased for our original budget, and we do anticipate to return some of the Chromebooks. And down here, you see the revenue offset. And for the month of November, we did receive some tuition in the amount of $6,000. And that pretty much concludes the financial report. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions from board members? I don't think there are. So I apologize. The motion was, did it include the transfers? I don't recall.
It did. I didn't hear that it did, but it.
I can reread it. It was, I moved that the Board of Education approve the financial report and transfers for the month ending November 30, 2020.
Oh, great. Okay.
But if I didn't, that is the motion.
No, that's great. I wanted to make sure that we got everything in there. And I'm sensing, can I take the share screen down?
Yep.
So I can see everybody. All right. So if there's no further questions or discussion, I think we can vote on the financial report. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. So that passes unanimously. Thank you so much for all of that information. It's a complex financial report these days because of all the differences in expectations, I guess.
There's a lot going on, but thank you.
All right, so that brings us to our old business. We have COVID-19 update first on the old business.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Koo. I will be brief. As you know, I sent a letter to staff and parents regarding our plan to return in full on January 4th for K-6 and shortly thereafter for 7 through 12. We will continue to review our classroom space and lunch distribution, as at least for now, the plan that was approved by the Board of Ed includes the final classes in remote at home for middle and high school. And I know they will be looking at tweaking that a bit, and we'll bring that to you for Wednesdays so that it aligns with our elementary schedule. Just so you know, all of these schedules make hours and prep time per contract equitable for all of our teachers K-12, and that's important. And as far as a return, we were clear that we needed staff, and if we experience the kind of quarantining of key staff, this certainly needs to be addressed when it comes to coverage. And as I mentioned to some of the parents, it seemed to be a perfect storm at one point where we were really needing coverage. And in the last week, I have to say, thanks to parents, and I know some of them brought that up earlier, and community members, and the help of PTA as well, we're starting to get applications to support us when we return. And I know Suzanne DeRamo, who's our Director of Human Resources, said that was the most she had in a week. People were really stepping up and coming in, filling out applications. And of course, we have our online system as well. So that's helped a great deal. I know the belief is that teachers only take care of their own students, but when we are in person, everyone has additional responsibilities and duties to cover other areas where kids move around, whether it's lunch or recess or supporting students. So when we have huge numbers of quarantines, it's difficult to support any other area, and we have to rely on many of our teachers during their prep time or free time. And I know that was very, very difficult, again, in this window of time that I'm referring to, because if you know, we were in school from the beginning. We went in full K-6. That has certainly been where we feel it was important to have our students in school. And we want nothing more than to make sure all of our students come back. But we also have to make sure that we don't compromise safety, and that's important. I've been clear and consistent through all of my communication that our experience and data shows there is no spread in schools. We have not seen that. And I know we've said that again and again. And I've also been on with our teachers just recently with the executive board. And I know Andy Birdie has been with me in many of those conversations. And we have talked about that and reemphasized that. You know, we were charged with making decisions based on specific metrics and the implementation of all of the requirements that were handed down to us from the state. That's how we put our reentry plan together, and that's how we moved forward. None of this has changed, and we have worked from the beginning with our Director of Health, Donna Colbert, which is also what all districts were directed to do. We also include Ann Dalton. I don't know if she's still on the line, our nursing supervisor and our acting as COVID liaison to review our status. We still get weekly reports. We post them on the website. But that being said, we feel confident just in what's been happening over the last week or two, that we can come back and be able to manage based on staffing and our requirements of social distancing. We do, as I said, need to make a few tweaks at middle and high school just to make sure all of those mitigation strategies are clearly in place to ensure safety, but we have some time to do that when we return. We still also have the flexibility, and I've answered, you know, we have over 4,000 families, and I also receive emails of those who still want to keep their children home, and that flexibility is still in play. So parents can choose remote learning at any point. That was something that the state impressed upon all families early on, and that still is something that we offer. And I did reemphasize all of this in my letter to the community as well, and to parents and staff. So I know Donna Colbert's on the line. Donna, are you still there? Oh, maybe not.
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, hi, Donna. How are you?
Hi. I'm good, thanks. How you doing?
Good.
Still here. I'm still here.
I just wanted maybe if you had a few comments on all of the discussions that we've had and will continue to have, even as far as bringing our students back safely in January.
Sure. And, you know, I think we've maintained all along and have been able to see that, you know, students in school in person is a safe environment. I think, you know, you've all worked really hard to create that safe environment. And, you know, what we do run into, and, you know, I think people need to be prepared because we will continue to run into where we will have cases in the community. We will have to quarantine members of the community, whether families, whether it's the children or the parents or, you know, everybody. But, and I think, you know, I wanted to say, one of the things that was so important in the first part of the school year was the work that the school nurses and the school staff, the teachers and all the staff, was to be able to be prepared and to, we had a very rapid response when we were dealing with cases and quarantine, so that the lines of communication were already prepared. The information about where students were literally, we knew where students were. We didn't face the situations that I think we saw in other school systems where they actually had to close for a day at a time just to sort out contact tracing. I give a lot of credit to the school nurses and to all the staff, because just being able to take that very fast and efficient action allowed us to stay in school. And I cringe at the thought of how many times we may have to start, stop. That's very, I think that's going to be difficult, and I'm hoping that we can stay on top of it like we have so far moving forward. But I do want people to be prepared that, you know, we have seen cases rise, and we will continue to see cases rise. I don't expect that we're going to see that transmission in school, but it's still going to have an impact on the school. And so, I want you to like kind of buckle up, because this is what, and I know that's what you've been working toward, being able to recruit more support in the school as far as the volunteers and the different folks that are going to be able to help out in the school. But, that's where we're going. I mean, we've been told to expect that we may not actually peak until mid-January. I'm not really sure how that's going to go, but so I think we have good systems in place to be able to respond to that. But, we need to be prepared. I feel, very confident that I'm on your team, and I'm on the team with the school nurses especially, that work will continue. And we're going to, always being able to maintain that safe environment, always trying to keep the kids in school. Because I have always, as you know, in our conversations, think that it's the safest place for our kids. But we've always wanted to be able to support our residents and our families while we're doing that. But, I think, it's kind of hard to hear some of the things earlier tonight, because most of what we can or can't do depends on human behavior. And what people are willing to do or not do depends on human behavior. So there's different thought processes and priorities out there in the community. And I think we all here collectively know that our priorities about our students and our schools, but we're really relying on human behavior here. We don't have all the other tools. And even as we work towards vaccinating our community, it's going to take a while before that has a significant impact. So we're really relying on human behavior here. And that's really what we have in our toolbox right now. So, I keep thinking about what Brett said earlier, and we all know is that we're doing the best that we can. And I just, things have been on the rise. I think everyone's been doing a great job. We're going to keep moving, but I just kind of want people to be prepared that there's still going to be a lot of moving pieces to this. I was really pleased to hear that you were able, Dr. Rodriguez, you were able to, we were able to get more support for the school system, just knowing that there's likely going to be more, more adults are impacted, I think, than students. And, I would expect that we'll continue to see that. But at least I feel pretty confident that, we have a good team. We have, I think we have an excellent system. I know that everybody's, going in the same direction here. And, that's what we need to keep doing.
Thank you, Donna. I appreciate all that you've been doing in terms of originally having direction from the state on, specific numbers at which things would happen and how that's changed over time. And obviously we change as we learn new things. And I appreciate the ability of you and Dr. Rodriguez being able to, and Ms. Dalton being able to take in all of that and change direction based on whatever the information coming from the state is and what the newest guidelines are. Are there any questions from board members? Yes, Ms. Lideline.
This I think is a question for Donna, and Lori, you could please add to the answer if possible. How is it determined when and if a faculty member needs to quarantine?
Well, there's this kind of our standard of what is the potential exposure, and we really do kind of look at the environment that the staff or the teacher is in. There's the baseline of we always use less than 6 feet, more than 15 collective minutes, but sometimes it will really depend on what was the level of activity, because we know that if there is a closer or more intimate interaction between the case and if it's a student or another staff and the staff, it doesn't take that long. It's contact with droplets. So depending on what's happening, I know sometimes there's work or interactions in the school where you can't necessarily keep 6 feet the entire time you're there. And, we have to look at those circumstances pretty much every time. It becomes case by case. And we do rely, I should add that, we need to rely on the adults. we're not going to try to sort out information with the students, which I know it might frustrate parents sometimes, but when parents send their children to school, they are letting the school be the guardian of their child, and so we really need the adults to help us sort through that.
And how about? Oh, yeah. Sorry.
No, I was just going to add that Ann Dalton and the nurses play a key role in that as well, in helping Donna, talking to staff and making that determination. That's part of the whole contact tracing.
And if an exposure happens outside of school, does the school and the community, Donna, do you still make the decision about whether or not they have to quarantine, or is that by their primary care physician, or how does that work?
Well, I would make the decision if they needed to quarantine. I'm not sure when a doctor would want to disagree with when somebody should quarantine. Because the need for quarantine really has to do with the exposure to a case. So, I will be honest with you, sometimes not related to school, but I've talked to people in the community, not many, but they may have their own interpretation of what they need to do. And the best thing that I can do is just give them enough good information that helps guide their follow-up actions after that.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from board members? Oh, yes, Mr. D'Elia.
Staffing has been raised as a big issue. Do we know how many subs we're looking to? How many we need, or do you have a goal, or are we? I don't know, Lori. Can you comment on that, Lori?
I was hoping to get at least 20 to start. We're already close to 10, 11. And that's a great start in just this week alone. And again, that's really hard to determine because as you heard Donna Colbert say there, we don't know what to expect in January. I don't know if it'll be key staff or support staff. It just depends on where those quarantining takes place and what that impacts in terms of the rest of the entire either building or district. But I feel really confident knowing who's already been quarantined and who has come back, that might help us out a great deal as well.
Is that 20? I'm sorry, Rebecca, do you mind if I just get a clarification? Is that 20 additional to what we already have?
Yes.
Okay, so we have subs already. You're looking for 20 more.
Yes.
Thank you.
And actually we are down 17%. That's why I asked that question of Tanya to highlight, because when you're down paras have a lot of responsibility. And so do subs. I mean, they're moving students around. They're taking the place when teachers are elsewhere. So there are a lot of moving pieces. And again, I can never comment on what other districts, have in place. They're different sizes, they're different schedules, they're just different districts in general. We talk, just so you know, the superintendents and I talk weekly. I actually am I think one of the parents mentioned Oxford. I'm a resident in Oxford, so I know all of the ins and outs of the questions that came up in our community, and why certain presentations were made to kind of share information. So we're, again, it really is about the particular unique nuances of a district and how that has to operate. And everyone's very different.
Yes, Ms. Harriman Stites.
So just to clarify, the 20 additional folks that you're looking for, that you already have 10, identified, are those combined paras and classroom subs, or how are you?
No, the flexibility that has come down from the state has focused more on substitute teaching, meaning you don't need the 2 years of college. they haven't really made the flexibility on the part of the paras. So there is more to being a para, even a para sub. But we have 2 out of the 10 right now who qualify to be para subs, and those to be or paras, and those to be substitute teachers. Very different. And we have 2 that need waivers, and it's just a matter of the criteria and their experience with children is part of it. So, but that's a very good start, what we have. I mean, again, Suzanne Duramo just caught me tonight before I was leaving and said, wow, we haven't had this in a while. And again, as you know, again, I can only comment on Newtown, but what we saw is as cases rise, we start to lose, you know, those who are willing to come in and be substitutes. So we're hoping that doesn't happen again. But I honestly really want to thank the parents and the community because they stepped up, and I think that's how you really solve problems. And we really needed it. And before I knew it, there were, you know, folks coming in and filling out applications, and that's really monumental.
Can I just add another follow-up? So part of the reason I just wanted to clarify this too, because I think there's some confusion, you know, some talk about not planning in advance and, you know, but part of the reason why we are able now to go to the community to look for these subs is because the state has relaxed the requirement around substitute teachers. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. That's huge. And I know that the other piece, you know, we were losing people as well. So as much as you can hire, you've lost people. We were already down. And again, that was maybe unique to our district. We were down 17% of our paras and less substitute teachers. And again, it's always a matter, every district, every building has, you know, a variety of people that they can go to and call upon. And if we start to see a decrease in that, it's very, very difficult.
Just
go ahead.
And the decreased, we're thinking that's due to COVID. I mean, I know I have questions about whether or not, you know, our pay is competitive with neighboring districts. So I have concerns around that if we're losing that volume of people. But, you know, given
I could actually respond to that because we started, I think, way back when I first came in and took over this position, we were at, I think it was $80 per day. Anna, am I right? About 80. We went up to 85 after that. And then I increased it very recently to 90, which is average. So we are competitive. Now, are there districts, you know, in other parts that might be at 100? Yes, there are. But we're competitive at the 90.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. D'Elia?
I don't know, does the board have the authority to bump it up even more to be more attractive? I mean, I hear what Ms. Harriman Stites is saying, and do we have the authority to do that? Or I know it's a tight budget, but we want subs, you know, we need people. We got to get these kids back in school, and it's a staffing issue. Is there something we can do as a board to make this more appealing?
I can say if this goes along where I think it's going, and again, we still have time, as I'm hearing more and more parents and community are going to be filling out applications, I think we'll be okay. If we don't see that, then it's funny you bring that up. I was just thinking about that tonight, that that could do it. I mean, to go up to 95 or even 100 could help us. But again, I'm not convinced at this point it's just that. You have to remember, every district, when they came in the beginning of the year, we're looking for staff and substitutes and paras. And so the competition was greater. And I know we're not alone. I'm on every week with the superintendents in Western Connecticut. This is an ongoing issue.
Can I ask
I
just,
know that's why places like Monroe are out and Brookfield, and I can name many, many more.
so is it just a matter of substitutes, or are there staff that have been quarantined that we would not be able to use substitutes for, or bus drivers, support?
Well, I will tell you, I think I shared this with the group of parents that I met with. There were, again, during this window of time, Ann Uberti was trying to, fill in for administrators, and we had whole offices out. We had paras and teachers. It just became very, very difficult. And then I got a call one day where we were possibly going to be down 3 bus drivers. And this was at the last minute, where there wasn't even really enough time to call to let parents know that what do we do? What do you do when your bus company doesn't have bus drivers? And I know that they have had a difficult time with that from even last year, even before COVID, that was an issue. And I knew it going in. So they have worked really hard pulling bus drivers when they've been quarantined and pulling bus drivers to fill in. But again, there was a point when they were down bus drivers and pretty much their entire office was also quarantined. So it was it was just very difficult at that time. And again, if you're not in it, then you really don't understand the nuances of that. And it was just something that happened to us here in Newtown, and I'm sure others struggle in other ways, but it was very difficult. I think with everyone returning and with additional subs, again, I check with All Star, once a week. How are we doing with bus drivers? Because that's a vulnerable population too. So, we hope they have a plan B, and they do. They go to other towns, and hopefully, as Donna Colbert said, as the rise in cases, that usually is where that's impacting. So again, we may at some point say to a bus, of students, if they don't have a driver, that's out of our control. We don't hire subs for All Star. So if that does ever get to a point, it may even come down to, you have an option of remote or driving your child to school. So again, these are all pieces that we just need to know are out there and can impact us in a negative way.
Are there any other questions? Yeah, Mr. D'Elia.
Michelle?
Oh, yeah, Mr. Voros, and then we'll go to Mr. D'Elia.
I've mentioned this once before, and I'm in agreement with Rebecca and with Dan that I think we need to revisit the amount of money that we pay substitutes, because I have a feeling that we're not nearly as competitive as we should be, and I think that we don't have the ability to attract substitutes like other districts do. So I think when we look at the budget, we need to revisit that. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. D'Elia.
Does the board have the authority to raise the rate that we pay subs? Is that a board decision or is that an administrative decision?
I mean, the board, I suppose, I don't know. How has it happened in previous, have we raised?
We've done that in the past. Prior to Tanya, when Ron was here, again, we looked at it. And again, as I mentioned, we just looked at it. So I can actually share with you the rates so you can see that we are on average competitive. Again, we can look at it again, just if, the just to see if it attracts more. But I have to say, I think it's a combination of things here happening.
So maybe to satisfy all the questions about it, maybe at our next meeting, we can have, you can bring us information about how many subs we have. Are we short? Is there a shortage on subs? And a comparison of what we're paying as opposed to other districts.
Kim's on the line and maybe she can speak just for the high school. But I know the issue has been very difficult trying to cover, because we go to teachers when we don't have enough subs to cover classes. And I know we've heard that at teacher forums and climate and culture meetings, and that's actually an issue for many schools in a normal year. And I know that it's exhausting when you don't have enough subs, because you're actually pulling teachers off their one prep time and they obviously do get paid for that, but it is very difficult, especially in a very difficult year like this. Kim, do you want to speak to that? Because I know it's hit the high school hard too.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Dr. Rodrigue. I think that it's always harder to get substitutes at the high school level in general, unrelated to COVID. And I think one of the reasons why we were able to be successful is because our staff really did step up during their prep periods, particularly because it worked in the schedule, the block schedule that we're running, that they have a very long period of time. And so for them to cover another class was still worth it and enticing enough with the amount of money that we gave to cover for them to do that. But that's been that's been a huge part, that and the extra building subs that you were gracious enough to give us at the beginning of the year really have been the only reasons, because we really don't have many day-to-day subs at the high school level. We're really kind of banking on our interns and our building subs and then our own people.
I should also add, thank you, Dr. Longabuco. I should also add that prior to the year, we anticipated just this kind of thing happening. And so we added additional building subs at every level. And that was in anticipation of quarantining and all of that. And still, there was an issue. So just to give you a picture of how many quarantines were happening, even the additional building subs and subs caught up with us still.
All right, any other board questions?
Michelle?
Mr. Voros?
And Lori will totally confirm this. The block scheduling that Kim was talking about works at the middle school and the high school. But when you get to the lower levels, like in elementary, they don't have the block scheduling. So they don't have, the elementary teachers don't have the time to be raising their hand and saying, okay, well, I can cover this class for someone, because they don't have that kind of time. So it's in those areas, in those buildings, where the sub situation becomes very problematic. Thank you.
Okay, I think we should, if there are no more board questions, we should probably wrap up. I do want to mention though, Mr. D'Elia.
You can finish if you had something. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I have another question or two.
Yeah, go ahead. I was wrapping up, so go ahead.
I was wondering if we can get some data on the impact on learning that this is having. And I don't know if, and I know I asked Ann about this 2 weeks ago, but I would really like to see how the kids are doing. I really want to know how well the kids are doing, and that's one of our most important roles as a board.
So we have that planned for the next board meeting, and Ann will be presenting all of that information.
Thank you very much. I have another question unless someone else wants to go. I feel like I'm monopolizing.
Go ahead.
I'm actually glad that Mr. Nichols is still here. Thank you for staying on the line, Mr. Nichols. I'm significantly concerned about the students' well-being, their mental health, and Mr. Nichols said something, and I appreciated that very much, that we might be in need of a little more counseling. And I'm wondering if we should possibly move now on bringing in some more counselors to help the children. And I would consider that a COVID-related expense, but I just want to make sure that we have enough people and that we can, I think this is a critical time for that. So I just wanted to say that. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts.
So I don't know how we measure that. I like the suggestion of, what are we doing? How are we ensuring that students are learning in this environment and actually asking for data to look at that next.
I can say, and Brett, you can add to this, but I think once everybody's back after the holiday, that's something that we want to look at. And you get the best information directly from those school counselors. And Brett works with those school counselors, every day, every week. So I think that might be something that we can look at in terms of what needs do we have. Especially at the lower levels, as you mentioned, would be something to look at. But again, I think it's important to wait until everybody's back in again and in full again, and see what the needs are. And that's an easy measured approach.
Okay. So let's let Mr. Nichols, did you want to add to that?
Just really quickly, the changing models present new and changing needs, and I like Dr. Rodriguez's suggestion of waiting. That's why I was a bit hesitant, because I think we just need to really assess the needs once we come back in full. We're making ends meet, but we really need to assess, I think, when we are back into a routine, and we can really get into the nitty-gritty to see what our needs are. And it may not be a counselor, maybe a social worker who has community connections. And so I just think there has to be more of a needs assessment before we jump forward on that, even though I do appreciate you guys continuing to think about the mental health needs of all of our students.
That's great. Thank you. That helps a lot. So Ms. Harriman-Stites?
No, and that was sort of kind of the point that I was going to make as well, that I believe, obviously the school counselors play an important role, but I think the issue is much broader, and we need to look at our school psychologists and our school social workers to see if perhaps there's, added staff or time that we need there, in addition to really the entire special education department, to see if there's something that we can do to help fill the gaps that have happened during this time that we've lost face-to-face contact with our students. So I think a full analysis of both of those areas is really important, and I appreciate you for bringing that up, Mr. D'Elia.
Yes, Mr. D'Elia?
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to try to be preemptive and not reactive. And I think it's critical for us as a community and as a school to use the data and figure out what's going on, but also try to anticipate what's coming. Because this is going to be a while. It's going to be difficult. And so anything that's needed, I think whoever it may be needs to come to us and say, I need this. This needs to happen. Thank you.
All right, good. Anybody else before we wrap up? All right, so before we wrap up, Mr. D'Elia.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, and I'm sorry I'm talking a lot tonight. Dr. Rodriguez, I appreciate that you're opening up the schools again in January, and I think that I do think it's the best for the children, and I think it's a good decision. And I think that we're going to make this work. And I just wanted to thank you for making that decision along with your team. Thank you. I'm done now. Sorry.
All right, thank you. I just want to sort of address something that maybe Donna touched on a little bit when she spoke about the community. You can't hear me. And that is the change in the DPH travel guidelines. We have a holiday break coming up, and I know that everybody's tired of hearing about, you know, being careful and watching what we're doing. But I honestly believe that the success of our schools being open depends greatly on the community, and I hope that those travel guidelines are something that I think, I don't know if they're out yet, Donna, if you have seen them, but.
Yeah, I don't think they're out yet. The DPH talked to us, was it this morning? I think it was,
Yes.
Ann.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they keep telling us that they're coming anytime now, but we're waiting with bated breath and they haven't gotten here yet. And they would be really helpful if they came soon.
Yeah.
We also included Donna and I talked, and that's why we put in the DPA, the Connecticut DPH link in the parent community and staff communication. There are some really good resources there, but particularly when they do update that website for the travel, which I know is coming anytime now, you'll be able to access that. So we put that link in purposefully.
All right, thank you. I think if there are any more questions, are there? I think we'll wrap up now and move on. Thank you so much, Ms. Colbert, for sticking with us and answering questions, and Ms. Dalton for being here as well. All the work that you're doing in terms of the contact tracing. I know it's so important to, it just takes a great amount of trust. I think it's an art form, and I appreciate all that you're doing in terms of making that work. All right, so that'll bring us to our second read and possible action on conversations on race curriculum, and I'll entertain a motion on that.
I move that the Board of Education approve the conversations on race curriculum.
Second.
All right, so Mr. D'Elia makes the motion, Ms. Harriman Stites seconds the motion, and I don't think there were any questions.
Speak to my motion.
Yes, Mr. D'Elia.
I just wanted to say I'm in full support of this, with one caveat. The movie, and I know that there's a disclaimer about the movie that's shown in this curriculum. It just has a lot of really, really significant language, and I just want to make sure I'm fully in support of this curriculum, but the language in that movie it's strong, and I just wanted to state that for the record. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or speaking to the motion? All right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None. So that passes unanimously. And that brings us to our second read and possible action on policies.
I move that the Board of Education approve policy 5145.5, sexual discrimination and sexual harassment.
Second.
Mr. D'Elia makes the motion, Ms. Harriman Stites seconds it, and this time I'll let Ms. Harriman Stites speak to the motion. Do you want to?
Sure, thank you. We had a couple of issues that were brought up at the last board meeting, and then questions from a board member. You'll see in your copy in your packet, the changes that we made are in purple. We changed the definition of sexual harassment. Sorry, I lost my screen. We changed the definition of sexual harassment. Just that's the sexual discrimination. That's that first purple section there. We expanded the definition as suggested, and then we changed the procedure on page B to be in line with our recently passed racial harassment policy. So it has similar language related to the anonymous alert app and putting the onus on every member of the school community to report incidents of sexual discrimination or harassment that occur in the school, after school, or at off-campus school events. So I believe those are the changes. I did hear from a board member right before the board meeting, and I did not have a chance to fully understand the point. So I know there may be a question, so I guess I'll open it up so that board member can ask that question and we can discuss it.
Okay, so are there questions, or Ms. Zukowski?
Yes, thank you. First, I'd like to say I really appreciate all of the attention that you and Dan and Dr. Rodriguez spent for the two issues that I brought up at the last board member. And I thought the work was very, very good. So thank you very much to Rebecca, Dan, and Dr. Rodriguez. I'm sorry, Ms. Harriman-Stites, Mr. Cruson, and Dr. Rodriguez. But one of the things that Michelle had brought up at the last board meeting was a question of readout to the board. For this particular policy, the readout is in the regulations. But if you look at the racial harassment policy, there is a statement, which is the second paragraph of the procedure in that policy, that states a summary of all such incidents and their dates of resolutions shall be included in the annual report required as outlined in policy 0523. And so that racial harassment policy has an explicit requirement for the board to hear summaries of reports. And I was thinking that it might make sense to have it comparable within the sexual harassment policy too. So I'd like to move to amend, and the motion to amend the motion to add the language, quote, a summary of all such incidents and their dates of resolutions shall be included in the annual report required as outlined in policy 0523.
I'm sorry.
I was reading off of my email, but this is fine. And to add it as the second paragraph of the procedure section of the sexual harassment policy. And by doing so, it would make the two policies.
Wait, can we get a second on the motion?
Get a second on that. You got to get a second on that.
Yes.
Rebecca, are you, or is it me?
I'll second it.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
go ahead. Go ahead,
All right, so Ms. Zukowski, so that I didn't realize we were making a motion, but so the motion is, as you were stating, right, to put this in the second paragraph of the procedure section, what we have on the screen. And Rebecca has, or Ms. Harriman-Stites has seconded the motion. Now, did you want to speak?
yes,
further?
just very quickly. If we add this, then the two harassment policies will be in line with one another. And so I would recommend that the board members consider this. Thank you.
All right, so has everybody taken a look at the wording? Can I take that down so I can see everybody? Okay. So is there further discussion on this? Yes, Ms. Harriman-Stites?
I think, on the surface, it seems like a good idea. I would just like to hear from Dr. Rodriguez to make sure that that is in fact something that administration is able to furnish.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's always something that we talk about before we kind of add it to the policy, which is sometimes why it's in the regulation, just to give administration a little bit more leeway in how they present those things. But as long as Dr. Rodriguez is okay with that language, then that works for me.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, Mr. D'Elia?
In full support of the motion. Thank you for making this motion.
All right, anybody else? Sensing no further discussion, we'll vote on the amendment to add the language that Ms. Zagorski has proposed to the section that she indicated. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. So that passes unanimously. And then that brings us back to the policy as amended. Is there any further discussion on the policy? All right, so sensing none, all those in favor of the policy as amended? Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None. So that passes unanimously. All right, and that'll bring us to our next policy.
Since I have the floor, Madam Chair, can I ask a question real quick?
Yes.
If I want to ask the policy committee to consider a policy, or when would I do that during a board meeting? Would I do that now since we're discussing policies, or would I do it during committee reports? Because now we're kind of trying to shorten our committee reports, and even though I'm long-winded and I've been on the soapbox all evening.
Yeah, Ms. Harriman-Stites, go ahead.
Typically, board members just email the policy committee and ask them to look at something, or it's not usually done formally at a board meeting. Though I'm sure if you just tell me what it is.
I was just wondering if we have a policy on social media for, like if there's a social media policy.
We have a policy around social media for staff. We discussed having a policy around social media for board members as well. I believe it was a year or two ago, and we decided against putting forward such a policy. But we can definitely look at, we can revisit the policy on social media for staff if that, or board, whichever you're
Also would be great, actually. I'm just curious. You know, you hear things are said and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I worry that, you know, certain representations might be made that can be seen as on behalf of the board or on behalf of the school or on behalf of a class. Is that something you would consider looking at for me?
Yeah, we can relook at those policies and bring forward something to the board of recommendation. I just want to note that we're not having a policy committee meeting for a little while. We're taking a little break. I think February is our next meeting, but we will look at it.
Thank you very much. I move that the Board of Education approve policy 5145.6 student grievance procedures Title IX.
Second.
All right, so Mr. D'Elia makes the motion, Ms. Harriman-Stites seconds it. Were there changes on this one, Ms.
There were no changes or comments or questions from board members.
Okay. Any other comments or questions now? Sensing none. All those in favor of the policy? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. So that passes unanimously. And that brings us to our new business. And I think I let everybody know that the Charter Revision Commission is being seated or interviewed currently by the Legislative Council, and they have a separate group that's considering recommendations on what needs to be changed in the charter. So I sent everybody the revisions that the Board of Ed had made during the last commission. I'm suggesting we use the same format, and maybe if board members have specific ideas for what they want to propose, maybe bring forward those suggestions. Unfortunately, they want this by, I think it was January 15th, but we only have one meeting between now and then. So we would have to have everything pretty finalized and ready for board discussion at our January 5th meeting. So I've gone through and looked at issues that have come up over the years. So we have, I don't know if the non-lapsing account is something that the board would want to consider being included in the charter. The appropriations process in the charter, the Board of Ed being defined as a department in the charter. I know we brought this up at the last charter revision, but I think there's still remnants of that in the charter. The Board of Ed election process and how the balance of political parties on the board is determined. And then we brought up date for the budget referendum at the last charter revision. I don't know if that's something we want to revisit again. So those are the 5 items that I have, and I'm happy to take volunteers to write those up or suggest others. I don't know. How would you like to do this? Yes, Ms. Zukowski?
I'm happy to be one of the volunteers, but would like to have someone else to work with because this is not necessarily English, easy concepts or language.
I think we would have to notice meetings if we're working in together. I mean, we'd have to schedule meetings and notice them, but we can do that. Is does anybody want to dive into charter revision work? Or do you have any other suggestions that should be taken up? All right, I'm sensing no more discussion. So
can we email you with some ideas? I just am not thinking right now with regard to this. So is it possible to email you some suggestions after we've had a chance to look it over more carefully? And because I didn't realize it was going to this level. So
yeah, I also thought we had a couple more meetings before we would have to do anything, but then I looked at the calendar and realized we only have one more meeting. So why don't you take a look at the charter, and if you have any thoughts on things that you think need to be brought up, email me. And
by writing up, you mean similar to what we have with the current list, and nothing needs to be done with the current list. That can go forward. We just need to look at, are there additional items, and writing them up as they.
I think the current list we would have to revise. I think the current list, some of the things have been addressed. So I think we would have to go back through that if that's. I just provided that as an example of what we had done previously. That's why you have it.
Okay.
So if nobody's opposed, why don't I work with Deb Zukowski on refining some of these, and if anybody has additional items, I think, you're welcome to write them up, to bring them to the next board meeting, to send them to Deb Zukowski and I to look at. So if that's okay with everybody, Ms. Zukowski?
Yeah, the one thing, additional thing that concerns me is that probably a good portion of what we may be recommending would have to do with the finances, the appropriations in particular. Is there a mechanism we could do where we would ensure that those members, especially on the finance committee, would have some weigh in on what it is we're considering?
If there's a meeting before January 5th, that certainly could be done. I don't know if that's in the works, but I think I would leave that to the chair of that subcommittee. And then if there's a meeting, then you can add that to the agenda.
Okay.
All right. Yes, Ms. Herman Stites.
I just want to understand the process. So the two of you will gather ideas if any board member sends them in, and then at our next meeting in January, you'll bring forward what you've compiled and written up for us to approve?
Yes.
Okay.
But just like every other motion and amendment that gets done at a board meeting, you're welcome to bring your own. I mean, I'd be happy to have every board member write up their own piece and bring it. All right. Does that make sense? Okay. So we'll move on to discussion and possible action on the 2021 Board of Education committees. So this is consistent with our policy 9130, which indicates that committees of the Newtown Board of Education shall be established 30 days after the first regularly scheduled meeting in December, or as needed by a majority of the board. So we're within that 30-day period and we need to reestablish committees. You have the committees, I think they're in your board packet. So essentially you're voting on the description of the establishment or reestablishment of the committees and the description of what the committee does. And then once we vote on that, the board chair, committee members shall be appointed by the chairperson of the board at a regular meeting at such time as the board decides to create or recreate the committee. So then essentially you have a second page, and those were the committee assignments that I had intended, assuming that we approve that the board approves the committees that have been proposed. Make sense? All right. So I think we need a motion.
I move that the Board of Education approve the 2021 Board of Education committees.
All right.
Second.
Mr. D'Elia makes the motion. Ms. Herman Stites seconds it. Are there any comments? Yes, Ms. Zukowski.
Would it be possible after the CIP/facility/finance committee to create a new acronym for the name, the short name that we can call the committee to be CFF? And that way it's you know, the short name we're using right now is CIP, which sort of in some senses gives more weight to the CIP than to the other two pieces. So if we could just have in parentheses CFF and change the nomenclature, I would appreciate people to consider it. So I can make a motion and we can talk to it, I guess is the way I'm supposed to do it. So I motion that we append to the title CIP/facility/finance committee, open paren CFF close paren.
All right. Does anybody want to second that motion? I will second the motion.
I'm sorry, I missed the mute. I was going to second it.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll say Ms. Zukowski makes the motion to add CFF in parentheses. Mr. D'Elia seconds it. Is there any further discussion? Sensing none. All those in favor of the amendment? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. All right, so that passes unanimously. And now, is there any other change, comment to the committees and their descriptions? The establishment of the committees? All right, I'm sensing none. So, Mr. D'Elia, did you have? No. Okay, so All those in favor of the committees as presented with the amended CFF? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. All right, that passes unanimously. We now have committees, and I am now assigning the committees as indicated on the second sheet that you have. It's essentially, I believe it's the same as it has been. And clearly we can, I mean, that's something that can be changed during the year. We have done that, so I think we're done. All right, so that brings us to our second public participation. I see that we have some folks still on the line. If there's anybody who would like to address the board at this time, you can unmute yourself using *6 and let us know who's speaking.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I was the one that tried before, but I'm also not a distance learning savvy person with the technology. My name is Lisa St. Louis, and I live at 137 Caratech Road. I'm calling in as a parent. I actually had about 2 pages typed and had looked over, but I'm glad that I stayed through the whole thing. Obviously, it goes without saying that my home is just like everyone else's in all of this, and we're devastated. I have an honors student in honors classes who is despairing. He's a junior. And the concept of the college application process is just is depressing and stressful. He woke up this morning and goes, "Mom, I just feel like there's no reason to get out of bed anymore." And he is an extremely well-adjusted, adapted, socially savvy academic kid who's a self-directed learner. My younger son is he's on a 504 plan. Life has been very difficult for him in general academically. He's extremely social. So it goes without saying all the best parts of his life have been taken out with all the distance learning. And again, this just goes to the pandemic, not necessarily, anything specific to the district because of all of this. But I do want to say that one of the things that I've been asking myself in all of this is why there is such a discrepancy with the staffing in Newtown versus other schools. And I do know that there is a staffing discrepancy. I've seen it. So that is valid. But and while Donna, I appreciate your efforts, we have a different Department of Health representative than the other districts. I don't know a lot about the process, but I do know that from what I've seen, the process has been concerning. We're losing so many staff members and students to quarantine, but I've also seen, I feel like it's like a reckless quarantining, if I can say it that way. I understand that she's working on what she believes to be the safety and well-being of the community, but it kind of comes across as reckless and CYA. We have the few situations that I've seen personally. Number one, the one that stands out to me the most was that an entire football team of 85 students was quarantined based on the possible exposure of an individual who was a coach of COVID. He was masked and all the students were masked. It was outside in an outside football event. So all these boys had to lose 2 weeks of their lives. And I know for a fact that not all those boys were in contact with that coach. Maybe mine more than anyone else, because I'm pretty sure he was an offensive coordinator and my kid probably had more contact with him than anyone. But the second situation was a PSAT class that another one of my son's friends was in. The entire class is quarantined in this PSAT class. And I've taken SATs and PSATs in the past, and if you know the form of that kind of a class, you don't go near each other at all. But the entire class is quarantined because one individual had it. That's just 2 examples. I could go into so many. There's been community investigations where Donna has not believed people and has, sorry, it's ringing, and it's just made grand sweeping quarantines. I'm wondering if that has to do with some of our staffing issues, is my point, not just in the school system, but spilling over from the community as well in regards to our staffing. Okay, so anyway, cram that all in as fast as I could.
Thank you for sticking around to share your thoughts with the board.
No problem. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you, you too. All right, and I see somebody else unmuted. Is this somebody who would like to speak? We can't hear you though. All right. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? And I'm not seeing anyone, so I will close out public participation.
Motion to adjourn.